So good morning and welcome everyone to August's edition of the new World of New Biz. Apologies for starting a couple of minutes late, but as always, I like to chat to my lovely guests before we get started. And as you'll know, I talk way too much. So thank you all for joining right in the bang in the middle of summer. And as you can see, I am fresh back from a very last minute holiday, which I managed to escape to, and feel incredibly lucky that I did manage to do so because I've just got back from Ibiza. So yes, I'm sure lots of you are going to be on holiday, but we do have a fairly large milestone which we've hit today, and for the first time we've actually broken the 1,000 sign up barrier. So I think we've got exactly 1,030 of you signed up to join us today. So for those of you that are joining us live, hello, welcome to the new World of New Biz. As you all know, we have a fantastic lineup for you today. We're going to be chatting about how events can really help you attract and win new business. There's been a lot of talk, I think, over the past few months about how there's webinar fatigue and what the future should be. Now, Boris is letting us all out a bit more. So we're going to really dig into, not just what's happening now, but traditionally the things that can help you when you're putting an event on and you're looking to connect with people. And I've got an awesome lineup of people to help me do that. So I'm going to introduce my guests and then I'm going to mix it up today because we're going to launch our poll before. And we're going to do another poll at the end as well, that we always do. But I'm going to launch a poll specifically about events to ask you guys some questions so we can really direct the conversation about the things that matter and that you guys want to know about. So first up, I have the lovely and my new friend, Victoria Swift. So Victoria and I connected at, I think it was the BD 100s Winning Together event originally, wasn't it, Victoria? And oh my God, she's just amazing. She runs an event production company, so very relevant for today's conversation. Not so much B2B events, but has obviously her own business, which is an agency that puts on events for clients, and does some fairly high profile events. I know you're not allowed to talk about all of them, Victoria, but just to kind of blow your own trumpet, could you mention the one that I desperately want to go to?
Yes, well, for 20 years I've been part of the production team that organises the Vanity Fair Oscar party in Los Angeles, which has been a real privilege. So it's an amazing event. Yeah, it's and sadly obviously hasn't happened for the last year, but I think word on the street is it's coming back next year, which is fantastic.
I love that. And yeah, I'm going to do whatever I can to try and get there as well.
If you need anything, I get asked all the time.
Cleaning, whatever's needed, I'm there. So yes, so Victoria obviously is an agency herself, but also has a huge amount of experience in terms of running events and how to plan for them and make sure that they run smoothly if you're looking at certainly doing those kind of larger scale events. I also have with me now, Lynn, I'm going to have to remember your job title correctly. Lynn Lester from the Drum. Is it head of events?
So managing director of events. But to be fair, you can call me, I've been called worse. So whatever you want to call me today.
Managing director of events. And we met, gosh, many years ago, I think at an awards party of some sort, probably a drum one. I think it might have been a Chip Shop Awards or one of them. And then we met at in fact, probably the last time I saw you was one of the Wire Hive Awards parties. Yeah.
A long time ago, yeah.
Yes. So actually, Lynn, as well as talking about how to put on really good events, which I know also the Drum help agencies do, obviously we did, and we spoke a bit about this on the podcast. So sorry to anyone who's already listened to me and Lynn on the Word on the Street podcast. Probably will repeat some things today, but it all helps it sink in. But yeah, loads and loads of tips on how to run events, awards, why you should do them, and lots of other bits. So last but not least, of course, the lovely Andy. Now, last time I saw Andy, I feel so lucky to host this webinar because I have lovely people that I actually love come and join me. We saw each other running down the beach and doing a sea swim. It wasn't even that long ago. No. Which I'm doing again on Friday, if you fancy joining, by the way. Yeah, 5K and a sea swim on a Friday morning at 6:30 a.m.
6:30, yeah. It's a good way to start the weekend.
it is the way to start Friday. You don't feel so bad for drinking wine all weekend. So Andy not only also runs his own agency, but also has hosted one of the largest, I guess, kind of digital conferences in the South Coast called Attention. Andy, do you want to introduce a bit more about Adido and your role there, I guess?
Sure. Yeah, I'm CEO of Adido. I helped start the company in 2003, so been going a very long time now. But it's been one of our best years we've ever had, fortunately, through the pandemic. One of our new business strategies has always been to try and educate the local community on the world of digital, because there's still lots of misconceptions, I guess, or mispractice that we see a lot of the time. So as leaders in the field, we wanted to try and bring some of our knowledge from our team to the local audiences. And we run an event for best part of 10 years, which has had a couple of names. It's now called Attention, as you say, is one of the largest free conferences in the south of England. We've had guest speakers like Tom Goodwin. We've had a guy called Ollie Rosisco, who's been brilliant. And we've had some celebrities like Daley Thompson come along, which has been an amazing experience to meet him, particularly in the Olympics year. So I've got a lot of experience running events. I've also spoken at dozens of events over the years as well. So hopefully I can bring some good perspective on our experiences and some thoughts on that.
Definitely. And just so everyone knows, and I think Michaela, thank you very much, has already made a little comment in the chat. Please do, if you've got questions, pop them in the Q&A. Please feel free to, there's a few of you guys on there today, so please feel free to introduce yourself on the chat. If you can try to direct questions in the Q&A so I don't miss them, that would be great. It often does get quite busy in the chat. So do say hello. Lovely to see everyone, and we will get going. And once you've got any questions, just submit them and I will try and address all of them. If we don't get to all of them, we will, and we often do this, we will come back to you with an independent answer afterwards. So don't worry, if I don't get to your questions, then we will come back to you. I'm going to launch the poll in the background. So today is all about multitasking. So if you, as well as listening to us, if you want to fill out the poll, that might really help direct some of what we discussed today. So I'm launching that and it will run in the background. I'm just going to pull over to my second screen and I'm going to get started with talking about everything that's happening currently. So there's a lot of talk about webinar fatigue. Obviously today is a good example of that. So we have had, I guess to date, better attendance ratios than we are having at the moment, but it is also the middle of the summer, so I'm very mindful that in September, October, it may change again. So we've only got over 100 of you out of 1,000, which is not normal. We usually have more like 200-300 people. That might just be because it's August, but I might as well be honest, we are in the middle of summer. So I was quite interested to see how it would pan out today. Last year, actually, our busiest webinar, where we had over 300 people sign up, and I think about 500 people sign up, about 300 dial in live, was in July. So we're in a different time at the moment. I just wondered, with probably more directed to you, Lynn and Andy, with everything going on at the moment, are you seeing that webinars are quietening down? I know for a lot of our clients, it's still one of the best ways for us to engage and attract and get it's the closest we can get to those real life conversations. So are you seeing this as a trend that webinar fatigue is real, or are they still a good tactic for prospecting?
Yeah, I can go first then. Yeah, sure. So I think it's not as clean cut as that, to be quite honest. So I think content is everything. So I think what you're finding is events, webinar engagements, if the content isn't good enough, then people will switch off. And also, hopefully we're entertaining enough today, because people can just turn off, like if a switch, if it's not engaging, it's not interesting. And I think we just have to remember why people would tune into a webinar in the first place. It's about, are they going to learn something? Is it going to be informative? Are they going to connect with others? What is the motivation for doing it, and what are they going to learn? So it's all about solving problems. And if people are sort of, and also it's how you market it in advance. If people are like, well, I'm just going to go on and listen to these people just talk in circles, then it's not for me. So that doesn't really answer your question as much, but I think you have to take each one objectively. And I think some will tail off if you're not giving that advantage to people. Then yeah, you're not going to get the cut through, and vice versa.
I think content is always going to be important with any webinar or any event you ever try and hold. If the content's not strong enough, then you're battling uphill. We did an event, we did a webinar back in late winter, early spring, which is about a Google algorithm update called Core Web Vitals, which to most people is a bit, jargony, etc., etc. But for people that know about SEO or maybe read some of the digital marketing press, it was a very, very hot topic, because people felt that all of a sudden Google's going to come along, judge my website against some new metrics, and then potentially penalize me. So that as a webinar that we held had lots of buzz, had lots of interest, and very good sign-ups to attendee ratios, which I think is what you just alluded to there, Katie. So I think webinars and events obviously need that. My personal feeling is that webinars probably losing their appeal a little bit. We've all been sat at home for a very long time. Again, it always depends on your audience. Some of the audiences that we have, they're just itching to go out. If someone's going to, pour a cup of coffee, I'll be there. I'll go whatever. So I think it's really just a matter of finding out your audience. What's the general feel of them? You're running a poll here, which would be interesting to see, and then trying to align it to that, because I think you can deliver really good content on a webinar. But I think some people are just very keen to just go and, shake hands, sit next to people, have small talk, because that's what we used to. And I think that's the way a lot of business is still done. So webinars have a good place. But for me, I think going forward, we're trying to do a bit of both, because I still think that physical connection is really valuable.
Totally agree. I think, the subject is key, isn't it? If you've not got a subject that people feel, and it goes back to a lot, and I'm sorry guys, my lovely regular listeners, but and I know I harp on about this quite a bit, is we will often work with clients and they don't truly understand the problems that their audience faces. So you've got to understand, exactly like you're saying, Andy, if there's something that's happening in the market right now, or there's a trend or a problem, you need to have your content plan, regardless of what tactic you're using, webinar, written article, round table, whatever it might be. The subject has got to be key, the content's got to be good, and it's got to be responding to a problem that that they have. So regardless of what tactic you use, I think that is the absolute that's the starting point. And then there's lots of different ways that you can push that message out. And I do think for us, the webinars will continue. It's really helped us grow, and I think help my audience learn, and we get so thank you to all of you, by the way, that send me such lovely emails, because we do feel like I've got a little fan club now, but we do really feel like we're helping people and providing content that is responding to it's been a crazy year, right? A lot of us didn't know what to do a year and a bit ago, and we have navigated this I think together. So yeah, I think for me the ingredients of a good event or webinar could be a really good thing for us to chat about. So first of all, starting obviously is a good subject. For me, the next thing is there's so many things, isn't there? Good data. You've got to have the contact details of the people that you want to invite, and you've got to have got that data from somewhere. So if you don't have that, then you need to purchase it, and there's some really great platforms out there, some which are more expensive than others, but we've used ones like hunter.io, prospect.io, Apollo, which is probably .io, but I can't remember what it is. We also use Alf and Winmo. Of course, this is what I do as a business, so we have lots of data, but you've got to have good data. You've then also got to think about your touch points, and you guys, you've all seen the emails that come from me and my wonderful marketing team. I can't take full responsibility for all of the emails, sadly, but it's about sending out. I always think when you're running an event, and Lynn, you'll know similar, that I don't want to release all the information up front. I think people are like, we can't email people and tell them about our event yet because we only got one of the speakers nailed. No, do that. And then having new speakers announced actually gives you extra touch points. So even sometimes if I've got all the speakers up front, I won't tell everyone because then I've lost other reasons to get in touch and really exciting announcements. So think about, because we don't always see that email the first time. And instead of just email going, did you see my last email? You can go, not sure if you saw my last email, but we've now also had this person, they're going to be talking about this. So you think about having various touch points, because it might take someone 3 or 4 times of reading your email before they actually sign up. So make sure you've got those keeping in touch points. And the same, and this goes with, regardless if it's a physical or a digital, virtual event, then think about the touch points that you need to make, when you're actually running the event itself and they've already signed up. Then reminders, 1 day to go, or you will have probably already had an email from me this morning, half an hour to go, grab yourself a coffee. Make it friendly, make sure that you've got those touch points in place, because people, certainly when it's a real life event, I think that's important. And that's actually what's really we've missed with real life events, because people, I think, feel, God, I'm going to give some, this sounds like horrible psychological things, but I promise you it's good, that people will feel guilty if you've booked and you've got their breakfast and you ask them for their, say you're running a breakfast event and you've asked them for their food order and then they can't come, they're going to feel immensely guilty. You're actually probably more likely to get an opportunity from that client, because then you have the power of guilt to use against them, which isn't so good with a webinar. But we have been able to overcome that by doing things like hosting virtual roundtables and sending out breakfast packs, using people like God, I can't remember, Cafe Pod and Packed Coffee and even Uber Eats and things like that, so that people then feel that there's that they need to turn up, rather than they've just signed up to a webinar and they're not going to come. So there are some really interesting little ingredients that you can introduce to make sure that people not just want to come, but that they do come, or that you get the power of guilt if they don't come. I know all of you are going to have some good tips as well. Anything in terms of ingredients for running a good event? Any tips from you guys? Go on, Victoria.
Well,
on you go.
So Victoria, you've got to have some here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think VS Creative, we've been quite fortunate over the last 15, 20 years that we organise events that are celebratory, for corporates and private clients. So we're in a position, we've been in a position that's slightly different, that really guests have wanted to be at that event. So which is brilliant from the start, because you're kind of already got a guest list, an attendance list coming. I think, which is what I always say to clients, the one thing that we can't do as event organisers and as a production agency is I can't dictate who your attendees are. And actually, once that event opens, it is really kind of slightly over to them, that they are part of, the feeling of that event and the vibe and the environment and the energy. So I think the situation we're in at the moment, if I can just talk, obviously I can talk about live events, which have been pretty decimated over the last year, is I think what we're going to be looking at now is really trying to build clients' confidence, which I think is pretty rock bottom. I think it's it's sort of emerging. I think the private world is absolutely itching to go. You just talked about it. There is this sort of desperate need to be celebrating milestones of life. We need that as human beings. Corporate world, I think what people like Andy and Lynn have been involved in, and a lot of my sort of colleagues and competitors, they've done brilliantly this last year with trying to keep events going and that sort of connection. I think there is fatigue now. I think people are now kind of going, oh, I just want that human connection. So I think as an event organizer, we've got the responsibility now of trying to sort of really encourage clients and reassure them that we can do it in a safe way. And I think the events research program has really helped with that we can hold these large events or small events, and they can be done very safely. We would always, as an event organizer, look at an event and go, right, we do risk assessments, it's part of the event safety plan, and COVID is just an extension of that. So it's just looking at it and looking at, right, what is the space, what is the venue, what is the capacity of it, is it indoors, is it outdoors, can we do something about guest flow, staggered arrival times, what are the sanitation points, just really making people feel very safe and secure and reassured. So that's my view, I think, on where this shifting from purely online to hybrid to hopefully getting back to live again will happen.
It's actually quite interesting that you're talking about that, because I think often we think, B2B events, we do quite a lot of smaller events, which certainly from a prospecting point of view does really help us, because you're getting, exactly like you say, Victoria, those really close human connections that you're probably not getting usually. But quite outstandingly, and I will share the poll results in a second, but I'm just going to sneakily tell you some insights from it beforehand. Conferences have come out top that you guys would all like to attend. Conferences, I mean, not hugely ahead. Keynote speaker events, conferences. So it's actually those larger scale events that, for you lovely lot, seem like they're the most popular, closely followed by kind of breakfast events, etc. So I think it is really important, if you're, Andy, some insights for you as you relaunch Attention, and for you, Lynn, as well, that, I think people are going to want to get back to those kind of larger scale events. It was interesting, this weekend we've had Camp Festival. It looked incredibly normal. I had lots of friends that attended because I don't live that far away from it. And we obviously recently also, Victoria, you and I went to Mad Fest. Again, incredibly normal, very, very busy, but felt totally safe. It was all outside. So I do think, there's definitely a desire for people to go back outside.
Can I maybe ask a question to the audience then, if we're going to carry on that thread? Is why do you think conferences came out on top? Do we think people want to have a whole day out rather than perhaps if they're used to working at home and they don't want to go out for the few hours? Do we think that's maybe part of this?
Yes.
We talked about this in our prep, didn't we? About, if we're going to run an event, what's the expectations going to be? Because I think even before we had COVID, talking to some people in the industry, they felt like there was just event fatigue because so many people run so many events. And so how do you make your event stand out? And I wonder, as we talked about yesterday, whether we need to raise our bar even higher to make people actually want to spend the time or the energy or overcome those mental barriers they may have of, well, I've got to spend a whole day somewhere else and I'm used to just sitting at home all day.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can ask the question for the audience of what do they look for and why they say conferences number one, because I'm interested in that.
Here we go. Look, we've already got people commenting in the chat. Thank you, guys. So yeah, breaking the day up in a way at the moment is very much welcomed. I agree. I get very itchy feet stuck at my desk all day. I'd be more inclined to go to a big half-day event than just traveling. Yeah, exactly, for something that's just 1 hour. I totally agree. So many of us are still going to be working from home. We're going to be going back into the office a bit at Street. Some of the team have decided that they want to go back in full time, but most people, are having some kind of hybrid working arrangement, which I know, Andy's the same for you. I assume the same for you guys, Lynn, and I think that there's most businesses and most of my clients exactly the same. None of my clients are forcing everyone to come back in full time. So if you're going to trek into London or whichever big city it is that you're near, it's got to be worthwhile. So I think it does kind of lead towards larger scale events needing to be put on to have that pull. It's always been important to have a really fantastic high profile speaker, a really fantastic venue. I think those things are just going to be more important. But yeah, well, then here we go. And Neil Young, thank you. Bigger event which is packed with more content. We need to make sure you're learning and you're getting as much value from giving up your time, because at the end of the day there is nothing more valuable than if you're putting on an event. There's nothing, you've got to think about this. In fact, I've been reading on my holiday. I do kind of work on holiday by reading and learning, and I never know how to say her name right. Brené Brown, and people will know her anyway. She's got a book called Dare to Lead, and she does a lot of TEDx talks, and she talks about how valuable people's time are. And if you say you don't get anxious, then you should do, because people are actually giving up their time to come and listen to you. So if you're putting on an event, you've really got to think about what value and how am I helping my audience. I think that is the absolute number one thing. I know, Lynn, you guys at Drum, we have had a sneaky pre-chat, especially because we spoke about a lot of this on the podcast, but you guys are starting to do, or going to be starting to do, hybrid events from September. Tell us more about that. How are they going to work?
Definitely. So we've already done 2, actually. We've done 2 in a bit. We've done a couple under the radar. But yeah, we basically did 2 award shows, like in a virtual hybrid setting. So, I mean, that worked really well. We had a very small capacity in the Drum Labs, which is the venue we own, or we rent out in Shoreditch in London. And I think it was a small capacity. I think at the time we were only allowed about 30 because of the space and the rules and the restrictions, and they were snapped up immediately. So people wanted to come. So when people were there, they just had a great time, and it did feel very normal. So we had all the good practice in place. And but you know what, as I said to you last time, when people have a few drinks, you can only do so much to start the inhibitions of a human being. So by the end of it, people were hugging, and and people were just desperate to get out in front of others. So it worked really well from that point of view. It was really nice, actually quite humbling to see people together again. It was just a nice scene. And then for us, the sort of virtual works really well because there's people over in like the States and in Asia that engage with our brand and with our awards and with our events. So I actually think moving forward, it's going to be all around choice as well. So, I can see from the chat, obviously, I guess most people talking are EMEA or UK based. So that makes sense because it's like let's just get to London or Manchester or, and come together. But when you're dealing with territories across the world, that's where the virtual really, really helps. And also because of commitment, so people's lifestyle have changed now. So people might have got a puppy, might have had a child, so there's certain limitations as well. So I think, I mean, it's sort of to answer your question, the way it's going to work for us moving forward, even when we do sort of kind of conference festival style stuff, we will start to look at in-person activations as well as the virtual. And I think where the virtual, you can't knock it, is the complete transparency of the data and what the data tells you and how people engage, because there's no hiding. You can have 200 people in a room and only 50 are listening, because let's face it, when you go to a conference, for me, a lot of the time it's about the networking. Most people are on their laptop or on their phone and they're just pretending to listen, occasionally look up and nod, and they're not taking it in. So I remember I went to an event in Singapore once, and it was a competitor event, and I asked to buy a ticket. I wanted to go buy a ticket. I didn't really care about the content. I wanted to go network. And they wouldn't sell me the ticket. And I was like, seriously, like, come on, I'm all the way over from UK, from Glasgow, and you're not going to sell me. I'm going to give you money. Anyway, I just rocked up and sat outside in the reception area. And before I knew it, everybody came to me. It's like, oh my God, you're over from the UK. How are you? So yeah, my point is, I think the networking element is so important, but also the learning and the inspiration. And that's where, obviously, as Andy said, it's the key speakers you get. So yeah, we're going to test the water and see what happens. And I think it would be ignorant to say this is how we're always going to do it, because we have to lead with what the market wants as well. And we have to be, I guess, sensitive to people's needs and wants. So yeah, I don't know if that was a really clean cut answer, but because I think nobody's got the complete answer at the moment. No, we're having to dabble. Yeah,
I think that's really key. And Andy, I know you spoke about that when we chatted previously about how important it is, to keep evolving. The event that you started with is not the event that it would be today. Neither would it have been the same event that you did 2 years ago, because you're listening and you're watching and you're responding to your audience needs, right?
Yeah, and also I go to quite a lot of events myself, which was part of my tactic, was to go and see what everyone else was doing, and also find good speakers at other events, because if they're speaking there, they're going to come and hopefully speak at my event. But I think when we first did it, it was from like 9:30 till 5:30, and we had 40 minutes or 20-minute speaker, 20-minute speaker, 20-minute speaker, break for 20 minutes. And it was just the whole day was so squashed with ideas and messages and content. And by the time you get to 3:30, you can look around and you can really see a lot of fatigue in people's eyes, or as Lynn was saying, they're not actually paying any attention whatsoever, or they're out on the long.
Yeah.
So the last time we did it in 2019, we had Tom Goodwin on last, who'd managed to convince to come over from Amsterdam and New York. And we put G&Ts and drinks on and said, well, this is the last one of the day. If you're going to stick around, let's really make this an enjoyable thing, rather than having to sit there and concentrate for another 45 minutes. And we also had lots of gaps in between, so people could go and check their email. They could network. As you say, one of the biggest reasons I think people come is to meet other people in similar positions of, oh, I've got this problem and you've got that problem, we can have a chat, which you don't really get on a webinar, unfortunately, because it's, you sit, you consume, and very rarely, I mean, some of them have been great where you can go into a breakout room for 10 minutes. You rarely get that interaction, which I think is the valuable part of the day. So, you know, if we did do another one, I'm thinking about even less speakers and more chance to network and probably have workshops or something, which we've always done, because I think that's where people get the value. It's not necessarily sitting there and listening to another person talk about AI for 30 minutes, which unfortunately is still the case in some events. So yeah, trying to adapt at times is always the key thing.
Yeah, so key. I think you've done exactly the right thing, is you're really seeing, you know, what people want and evolving your event to that. And like you say, what that is today is probably going to be very different even next year.
And I think even, you know, perhaps selfishly running my own event, I look at other events and go, that's just boring. That's just a bit crap.
Yeah.
Let's not do that ourselves.
Got to try and make it fun. Do you know what? It's really interesting, and I hope you guys enjoy these sessions. Hence, you keep coming. But we, I think, you know, need to be aware of, and I think there are a lot of people that host events, and it's just, you know, they're not engaging the audience. So we do try and ask questions. We have the poll. We try and get you guys involved as much as we can in this virtual place where we can't see you all, but I do hope we can do different things where we can see you all. But I think that is also really important. You know, some of the best speakers that I've seen, so if you're invited to be a speaker for someone, is making sure that you include the audience and to keep their attention, especially on a, you know, long day like today. Oh, Katie DLC, one of our campaign success managers, is joining us. I don't know if she realizes that she's dialing in to the live webinar. Nope, she's gone. So in terms of how you kind of, you know, I guess, structure everything, I think, you know, making sure that when you're talking, that you're asking your audience questions and, you know, getting them to vote and getting them to pay attention. You know, have you done this? Raise your right hand. Or if you've done this, then raise your left hand, or whatever it might be. You know, and that's the same when you're pitching to a client as well. You know, make sure that you ask questions and that you're engaging your audience during your, you know, session or talk, because it will mean that they, you know, are actually listening rather than doing work elsewhere, whether that's a webinar or a physical event. I think that's important. Sorry, I've got a fly flying around me.
To that point, Katie, I was going to say, just to let you know, so when we did our hybrid awards shows, so we did exactly that, where we had people in the audience in the venue, but then we brought the nominees in on Zoom. And then once they won, we spoke to them about how did it feel. So we encouraged them to sort of watch it with their teams. So you get people over in like Dallas, and they were watching it with their team, and everybody's running around. And so it created like real cool buzz because people were just so engaged. I think it was new. So the first one, people were like, this is a bit odd, but the feedback we've got has really been great. So we're going to continue to do that so that they feel very involved in it, because before, if we just had an event, say it was in London or in America or whatever, only the people in that part of the world could go. So you're right, it's about involving people where at every touch point if you can.
I think I love that. It reminds me a bit of like Saturday Night Takeaway or something, but I think it's so brilliant. I'm so excited to you know, I want us to be braver and start to do more stuff like that. And in fact, we have had a question then about that in terms of, and I think we've probably covered off some of it in terms of how we manage the events, but what are there any specific technology you guys are using at the Drum that our audience could go and check out?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of tech out there. So obviously you've got Hopin, you've got all the kind of third service sort of ones. We tend to use the Drum platform, so we're quite lucky because obviously we've got our own tech in-house. So we use the Drum, but what we did do is we paid a lot more money than what we actually would pay for a live show in terms of production value. So we brought in an outside company who then, you know, they did everything from the kind of audience, you know, recording to bring people in on Zoom to doing all that. So that's where we spent our investment for that particular one, purely because we felt that that was going to add more value to people. But don't be under any illusion that it costs more to do hybrid, because you're having to do two shows effectively for a live and for a virtual audience. So it's certainly not a cheap option if you want to do it right. It depends on the quality you want. We also use Crowdcast as well, so we stream to that, and we use Vimeo, and we've started now as well as sort of doing stuff on our own platform through like Crowdcast and things like that. We also stream on LinkedIn Live. We're going to be using YouTube. So there's lots of, and it depends if you've got a free or a paid for event, right? So it depends what you want to put out in the market. but there might be certain teasers that you want to sort of promote. So I mean, there's that's the problem. It's almost like paralyzing almost with so much choice out there. But I would probably just speak to some people that are doing it and just work out, because they'll all be using different things. Hopin's the one that's been sort of funded and people are really using it. I've heard good and bad things about it, but you have to commit to like a long period of time. That's the issue with these things. Some of the tech, once you've got it, and you can't just use it for 1 or 2 events. You have to use it for the year, so you have to weigh it up. Is it worth it, or could you do it yourself? And actually, depending on what you're doing, you might just use Zoom. Honestly, this is also a really good mechanic, as you're proving today. So you don't have to spend a fortune either. It depends on your quality of production level and also the why are you doing it in the first place. And I think if you keep true to that, it will help you work out what you need.
Yeah, there are some great production companies out there. We use, obviously I'm a part of the BD 100 event production team and launching a business with them. So yeah, we have found Hopin brilliant, but we also use an event company to help us put it all on, because there's so much to do. But I also agree, Zoom is brilliant. You can do fantastic things with breakout rooms. In fact, I've been on a training course this morning myself, which was all hosted on Zoom. So yeah, there's so many platforms out there. We've got, in fact, we'll share some. Lynn, if you can share with us yours, and same with you guys,
Sure.
Victoria and Andy, we'll send a list of some that we know that are trusted, that we've all used, so that you guys can have those. So yeah, Michaela, that's a job for us to do after this. Make sure we share it with you, because I do think as we come into this new way of, I guess potentially hosting events, there's going to be lots and lots of challenges around how we host hybrid. So we'll do our best to share our knowledge. Now I have, of course, now we've only got 20 minutes left, have loads of questions, so I am going to try and work through some of these. So have we got any, Katie, this is a great question, love it. Have you got any networking tips? I feel like after a year of lockdown, I've forgotten how to speak to people. I agree. Do you know what? It's really weird that I always find this about, I'm quite a confident, as you can probably see, person. And I obviously do get nervous sometimes, but I don't get nervous that often. But I do get really nervous at networking events, because I just find the starting of the conversation, like if you've gone on your own and you're just sort of stood there and you sort of go and speak to someone, it's that first bit that feels really forced and a bit weird sometimes. But I guess the thing is, you've just got to do it and be confident and be honest about why you're there and why you want to talk to people. I think being brave is absolutely key. That probably isn't the best advice, but I don't know if anyone else has got any.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that anything's proven out of this dreadful experience is that people are being more honest. I mean, what we're finding in our industry, which is it's a massive industry. I think Lynn and I were talking about this yesterday, the word event. I mean, really, it's vast. What is an event? You've got weddings, you've got birthdays, you've got conferences, you've got AGMs, you've got employee engagement. But the bottom line is, what you're all trying to do is really bring people together. And I think what we're finding is now people need that proximity, and it's practice. To answer that question about networking, I mean, I'm a fairly confident person, but going to MadFest the other day, and it's all about networking, and you're standing there going, I've forgotten how to do this because I've been sitting in my own office like this. But MadFest, by the end of the day, I felt like a real buzz, and it'll come back like this. And as the guys are saying, it's just looking at the environment, maybe, as you say, giving people gin and tonics, or creating an environment that I feel quite comfortable. I'm having a coffee and, oh, look, I know Katie. Hi, Katie. And you'll just get back into it, I think, very quickly. When you're doing a live event, it is all about reading the audience and reading the attendees. I talked to when we had our chat yesterday, live music. And I think anything, if you're going to do an event, even conferences, just some element of live music makes people smile and feel differently. You feel just more alive. So I think anything that can stimulate a conversation at a networking event was like, oh my God, aren't the guys great? Aren't the drums great? There you go. You've got, oh look, you work for Pepsi, marvelous. off you get.
I think we can all help each other as well. That's, if you go with someone or if you know someone there, just make an effort. If we all commit to making an effort to introduce people that we know might be helpful to one another, there are things that you can do, and I think if you do that, then it comes back to you naturally. So if you've got, I really think that you should meet this, can I go and take you to see them? And there is a lot of the conferences now have fantastic apps where you can look at people and maybe send a message beforehand saying, I'd really love to chat to you, do you want to meet for a coffee, or I'm going to be here, I'm going to watch this talk. Or I often will look at speaker, and there's been another question which is kind of helped me answer this one as well, but how do you source speakers, free and paid? Going to watch them, and looking at people that have done, I mean, that's not been so easy, right, amidst everything that's happening at the moment, but seeing people that are doing well on other webinars, looking at people maybe that have their own podcast or have written a book. And then I guess in terms of how you reach them, I mean, we will often start the conversation, those kind of conversations we will start on LinkedIn usually, and obviously we do use the sales nav so we can inbox people, but I would start on LinkedIn and or use a platform like hunter.io, prospect.io to get their email data, and then if you don't have any success in, then you can email them and or sometimes get their phone number.
I think that's the key thing. If you're going to invite, I mean, we run our own all-day conference, and so usually I've got 6 or 7 slots I need to fill. In the back of my head, I've already got 3 or 4 people who I've actually seen present, because the one thing that has annoyed me over the years, and we've had this internal battle, and I don't know what other people's views are, but sometimes the internal battle was, well, we need a big name, we need a Google, we need a Facebook, we need Amazon to come along, because that's what people want. And I've seen people talk from Google and Amazon and Facebook, and sometimes they're just reading a standard deck that HQ's been given to them, and there's no personality. I don't learn anything. It's like, well, you've got 3 product updates, great, that's not teaching me anything. Whereas the guy from the company 50 miles away has got an amazing story and brilliant personality and can tell a great thing that I can learn from. So it's always, to me, is always trying to find that mix of, I've seen this guy, you've never heard of him, but he's bloody brilliant, trust me. Plus also, we need a Coca-Cola to come along because that's what people want. And I think you need a mix of those things, because somebody's not going to, unless you've got maybe a reputation perhaps that we have, or maybe the drum has, of, well, I know they're going to put a good event on. I don't know who Katie Street is, but I'm sure she's going to be brilliant. Versus if it's a new event they've never heard of you need that name. I think that's always that mix, because to me, like, the speakers make the event, it's not the names. I don't care where you're from, but if you've got a good story, you can teach me something, and you're perhaps, to be blunt, entertaining, then that's what I'm there to value, rather than just the story of you and your £7 million campaign. Like, well, that's not my world.
The other thing about that is, sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, to add to your point, the other thing about that is you don't want the same people over and over. They've already done the circuit. So you want a bit of, as you say, you might want a little spice of the name if you need it from a marketing point of view. But if everybody else has heard them already 3 times about the product release, you don't really want them a 4th time. So it's like, working out who's done the circuit and who's original and who's new.
And the other thing to be mindful of, and I don't know if people are aware of this, but there's a thing called the DICE Charter, which is a thing started by a very amazing lady called Amy Keane. She was very, and still is very passionate about this sort of pale, male, stale panels that you tend to see. And I agree with that, and we've had various speakers over the years, just trying to have the diversity, as you say. You don't want to have either the same speakers or the same types of speakers, because again, I don't think you're going to learn much from that. So if you've not checked out the DICE Charter, then I just give that a shout out.
Oh, I love that. But so true. You've got to, we always try to, with today, you're the only man with us, Andy, but we do try to have diversity. And I think that's really important, because you want to have different points of view, and people with slightly different event experience as well, for instance today. We're trying to come at it with not just diverse in terms of sex, gender, other equalities. It's more around also thinking about diversity of opinions and thought. So Joe's actually asked something quite interesting, which ties into what you guys were just talking about. So he's saying, do you think there's more more of an emphasis on providing a more premium live event experience now, because traveling feels more unnatural, feels like the value the event needs to provide is far greater. And because of this, do you think we will see more ticketed live events to guarantee attendance?
Well, I'll answer the first question, as in the first part of that question, which I think slightly links into what we were talking about yesterday. What is the future of the events industry, or what do we think? Again, that vast network of events. I think Lynn came up with something yesterday. She said, actually, it's about experiences, events. Let's replace it with the word experiences. I think it reached a point pre-pandemic where events were the sky's the limit. What else can we throw at this event? What whistles and bells can we add on? And certainly as event organizers, with the technology that's available to us, there's some incredible things that have obviously been happening over the years. I think COVID has had a bit of a check on that. So I think coming back, I think the dialogue is going to be much more about content. It's going to be much more about what the people are getting out of it. So if you're doing something for employees, it's about reconnecting them. It's about re-engaging them, making them feel valued. How do we do that? I think that's the dialogue that we're going to be having with clients. Less about, well, what amazing act are we going to do and what fireworks can we throw at it? And it's going to be more about the person, the culture of the company, how we're going to get that back. How do I know if I work for Bacardi? What is the culture of Bacardi? So I think for us as an event production company, we're going to be listening a lot to clients without going in with the, oh, great, we could do this kind of scrolling LED screen, or a rolling ceiling. It's going to be less that, and how do you want your guests to feel leaving this? That's my take on the first part of that question.
Agree. Lynn or Auntie, anything to add?
Yeah, I think Victoria hit the nail on the head. Really, we're talking about is ultimately how you want people to feel and your reason for being and your why. So, to give you an example, I hosted for the first time this year. So I've done many before, but for the first time this year, I hosted my first charity, so a non-drum event. So I emceed this event for United World Schools because I know there was a fundraising question, so this might help answer that. But tying into what you're talking about, so United World Schools basically wanted to do an in-person event to basically, it was almost like a thank you for all the trustees and the sponsors and the donors who spend a lot of money. And they basically, it was quite an exclusive, maybe 30-40 person event, invite only. There wasn't any entertainment actually. There was just like more fundraising within the event, but people came for a common purpose because they believed in it. And I think as well that going back to the experience and the person, if you can find the common purpose, what's in it for you? Is it entertainment? Is it inspiration? Is it education? Is it a sense of belonging? Is it connecting with others? And I think it's making that really clear on the marketing and on the signaling of the campaign. And I think if you tap into the right audiences, people will want to be there naturally. But maybe to your point, people are more used to not turning up to a webinar just because you can't really be bothered and something else is happening. Whereas if you do charge a premium, maybe there's more likelihood to come. But I think there's a bit of give and take as well, because I don't think we want to charge over the odds depending on what it is. So it's very skewed depending on, again, that why, what are you trying to do? Equally, like brands, if you want to get brands in a small kind of round table setting, then why should they care enough to do it with you? And that's why we work with a lot of other partners, because everybody struggles with this. They're all trying to get in front of the brands, or some people want to get in front of agencies. So yeah, I would say it comes down to the experience, the why, and what's the common purpose, and why should people care? Because there's lots of other things to care about. And I think that's where your marketing has to be really on the money, really.
Yeah,
getting the clarity of why someone's going to spend the money, the time, the effort, as much as anything now. And maybe even, as I said before, that mental risk of, well, do I want to sit in a room with 150 other people who I don't know? We actually ran our event for the first 6-7 years for free, because we were doing it to engage with our clients as much as anything. And after a while, we realized that, a lot of people would register and then not turn up, which was annoying. I'm trying to cater for people. I'm trying to book a room of the right size. But then I think also there's an element of, if you do things for free, then what's the value those people are paying putting on it, even more so now, because, you know, why am I could register for a million things and not bother to turn up to them. So if I have that financial commitment, I think maybe that puts that thing in my head of, well, I've spent 300 quid or however much on the ticket, I should turn up. And again, on the event organizer side, maybe again, Victoria, you see this, that getting people to say yes, they'll come and actually attend is very different things. And you're always trying to weigh up the cost of doing, you know, the right thing by the people that say they'll come. So I think I'm expecting to see a lot more charged events just because of those factors. And I think if we know that we've got 100 people that are paying 300 quid, then I've got so much budget to play with, and I can make it an event to remember, an experience to remember.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I think, you know, charging a small amount isn't really worth it. And we have tried that with the BD 100. And I think, you know, charging 10 or 20 quid is, it's not going to help you cover any costs particularly, and it's also not going to help you because they'll just go, oh, it's only 10 or 20 quid. So I think if you're going to do something larger and it's really valuable and they're really committing, you know, and it's a kind of larger value amount, that's when it's worth charging. Someone asked about what we want to get from events. So I have, because I then forgot, shared the poll results. So there's some really interesting stats in here, but, you know, not unsurprisingly, most of you have said that you want good content and to gain knowledge and insights, which is good because we kind of guessed right before we even started talking about this. You guys filled this out. So yeah, I think that has to be the number one piece. Understand the problems that your audience face and then provide the right content. Now, we only have 7 minutes left. These always get really busy at the end. It's just the way it goes. But there's a couple of questions in here I really want to get to. So one is, do you have any stories of new business that you have brought in through an event? So, I mean, gosh, I have hundreds because this is what we do for clients. We put on large scale webinars and events and we help them win clients through that. So yeah, we have lots and lots, probably some that I can talk about, some I can't. And also my own business, you know, by putting this webinar series on, and also the other marketing that we do. But I would say predominantly the webinar series for me at Street has by far been the most successful new business strategies. It's helped us grow. We've had 3x growth this year. So most of our new clients have come to us because they've seen me and they've listened to our webinars. So 100% it is worth doing. We do it for a lot of our clients. Webinars are still one of the best tactics. Previous to us doing webinars, we used to do a lot more from a new business point of view, kind of smaller round table events, because you actually get your potential clients around the table with other leaders from, you know, and we would do kind of more like C-suite breakfast round tables, usually, you know, with one kind of key speaker, and then we'd get a whole load of other people that would join, and then you can use all those names. And we've helped connect our clients and win work with some major big brands, you know, from, I don't know, people like Bernardo's to John Lewis to Revolut and various others. So I think, you know, those kind of smaller round table events, and even if you start to spread them out and you do get people around a table, that you're not only learning from their problems because you're hearing them live discuss their problems, but they're connecting with other people. So it kind of crosses off two of the things that you guys want here. One, networking, getting new contacts, which was 78%, number two in terms of what people want, and two, good content to gain knowledge and insight. So if you can do something that fits both of those things, that's really going to help you. Guys, I'm sure you've got some really good stories on that as well. Andy, you must have won lots of clients from your event series.
Yeah, I'll quickly jump in. I mean, for me, the events are a good conversation starter and a good way to engage people who you might ideally want to talk to. We had a few bad years about 5 years ago where we are not sure if the company is going to carry on. And at that time, you think, well, why am I going to spend time and effort distracting myself with trying to run an event when I'm trying to pay the bills? And we did toy with the idea of stopping. And after a while, you realize there's a long tail on these events. You know, some people can be invited in 2016, 2017, and they're just not at the right point. They're not at the right company. They don't have the right budget, etc. So for me, like the payback can take 2, 3, 4, 5 years sometimes, because we don't do regular events. We do, you know, big events every sort of 6 months we were. So yeah, we've had people come 2016, 2017, you think, why are they coming? Why I'm inviting them, or why are they paying their money? Then 2019, they pop up with a, you know, well, now my 3-year contract has finished with my previous vendor. I'd really love to get in front of you because I love the events that you do. I've met your team, I've met you, I like the way you talk, I like the way you do business. And that's led to many contracts. Even last week, I think I pitched to someone who I think was probably originated from an event 5 years ago. So you've got to be consistent. I think you've got to keep delivering them and keep, you know, doing a good thing, and over time that will happen, and you come in some very big projects off the back of it, which, you know, Katie, you've talked about. We've had it as well, and maybe Victoria, maybe people have come to your event and they think this is a great event you've run, can you do one for me? I'm sure you've had similar things, or Lynn as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess what I do is it's showcased in what's actually delivered at the event. So yes, all of our business is traditionally been word of mouth, which is, oh, I saw you did such and such, or I saw you work with that client. And yeah, absolutely, that's where it's come from predominantly.
Yeah, and our side as well, I guess we come from a different point of view. So people don't come to the drum and use the drum necessarily. So we obviously win clients by networking and usually building up the rapport. But for clients that we're working with, so a lot of the time we'll run, like, whether it be round tables, we'll get them involved in our, you know, festival content, but by seen sort of maybe on a panel with a certain client, it's like, oh, let's take this conversation offline. I'm really interested to hear, you know, you spoke about X, Y, Z, and I think it's coming across as that sort of authoritative thought leader. But then the other, so that's the kind of networking element at an event. But I think there's other ways you can use events. So I think I might have mentioned this in the podcast we did, but we do the Chip Shop Awards, which is about creativity that may not necessarily be real. And there was someone that entered something for, it was Coca-Cola, and they basically came up with Pride. It was like the Pride sort of symbol for Coke. Now, that was just a scam ad. It was just made up because they came up with a cool idea. But then they decided to take it and they pitched it to the client and said, what do you think of this? We entered it into these awards. It done really well. And so now they're having conversations about, and it may lead nowhere or it may lead somewhere. But the point is they've taken an opportunity. And I think it's thinking beyond the event. It's not just about what happens there. And, you know, we were talking yesterday, you know, the minute an event's over, connect with people immediately. Don't leave it. Don't let it linger for months, or they'll be like, who are you again? Where did I meet you? So it's capitalizing on every moving opportunity that you get, but ultimately building that rapport. And the point earlier on about the networking is, I think it's been a reset now. So everybody's in the same boat. Everybody was vulnerable over the last year and a half. And I think, I didn't answer that question, but to me, you're all the same. I think, if anything, mentally it helps you from a networking point of view, because no one's grander than you. Yeah, they might have a big job title, but they're the same. They're human beings and they have the same worries and fears and concerns. And so I think if you just sort of reset that in your mind, I think that'll help also from a networking point of view.
Agreed. There we go. Look, bang on 12 o'clock. I nearly always go over, but only very slightly. So you'll see that in the background, I have launched a poll. Please do, if you've got a couple of, and it is a very quick one, a couple of seconds spare before you leave, do fill it in. I just want to say a huge thank you to my fantastic guests today. I didn't quite get through all the questions, but I promised to those of you that have submitted a question that we didn't cover off, we will come back to you or share them. I think some of them, so we will share them with everyone if they were anonymous ones. But yeah, thank you all so much for joining us. I really am, you know, super excited that we have got to over 1,000 of you signing up to listen in. And I hope that you found today's session super helpful and useful. Big thank you to my fantastic panelists. If you do have any further questions, please feel free to pop me an email. We are obviously, and one of the questions that I didn't answer, sorry, I know I am a minute over. One of the questions that I didn't answer, which was from lovely Andy, was what's the future for Street? So we are going to continue with the webinar series, but we are going to start to mix it up and introduce some new events, probably not till sort of September, October time. Of course, I am also launching another business, which you will probably all know about now, which is officially the sponsor of this, but Tamba.io, so the agency new business academy so tamba.io, and that is going to have a whole host of weekly events, some which will be open to all, some which will be for members only. So yeah, also keep an eye out for that. But yeah, big thank you to everyone. Thank you to everyone who's joined, and yeah, see you all again in September.